My parents kicked me out for getting pregnant. Now that I'm a CO, they want to meet their grandchild. If you're just tuning in, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update on this story. And don't forget, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. The mahogany grandfather clock in the living room struck midnight as 17-year-old feet shuffled nervously across the hardwood floor. The pregnancy test trembled in small hands, two pink lines staring back like accusations. 3 months. 3 months of morning sickness disguised as stomach flu, of baggy sweaters hiding the subtle changes, of sleepless nights wondering how to break the news. "Mama, Daddy, I need to tell you something," Julia whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the air conditioner. Her parents sat rigid on their pristine white sofa, still dressed in their Sunday best from evening service. Pastor Williams had preached about moral decay in the community, his words now echoing mockingly in the silence. Her mother's perfectly manicured nails gripped the armrest tighter. "What is it, baby?" The test dropped from Julia's fingers, clattering onto the coffee table like a gunshot. Her father's face drained of color, his usually warm brown eyes turning cold as winter steel. The scholarship acceptance letter from Howard University lay nearby, suddenly worthless paper. "You're pregnant." Her mother's voice cracked, the word hanging in the air like smoke. Julia nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Sorry." Her father's voice boomed, shaking the family photos on the mantel. "Sorry doesn't fix this disgrace. Sorry doesn't erase what you've done to this family's reputation." The room spun. 18 years of love, of bedtime stories and birthday parties, evaporated in seconds. Her mother turned away, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Outside, thunder rumbled ominously, as if the heavens themselves were weeping for what was about to be lost forever. "Pack your bags." The words sliced through Julia like shards of glass. Her father, Reverend Bernard Thompson, stood in the doorway of her childhood bedroom, his face carved from stone. 24 hours had passed since her confession, 24 hours of deafening silence and whispered phone calls behind closed doors. "Daddy, please. Don't call me that." His voice was barely human now, stripped of the warmth that had sung her lullabies and cheered at school plays. "You made your choice. Now live with the consequences." Her hands shook as she stuffed clothes into a battered suitcase, each item a memory being torn apart. The teddy bear from her 8th birthday. The journal where she'd written dreams of becoming a lawyer. The framed photo of her family at last year's church picnic, all smiles and Sunday dresses. Her mother, Patricia, appeared in the hallway like a ghost. Dark circles shadowed her usually bright eyes, her church dress wrinkled and stained with tears. For a moment, hope flickered in Julia's chest. "Mama." Patricia pressed $300 into her daughter's palm, their last act of intimacy before the door slammed shut forever. "There's a shelter downtown. They'll help you." The rain had started again, drumming against the windows like fingernails on a coffin. Julia dragged her suitcase down the front steps, each step echoing with finality. Behind her, the house that had been her sanctuary for 18 years stood cold and unwelcoming, porch light already switched off. Mrs. Henderson from next door watched from her window, curtains twitching with gossip that would spread through the congregation like wildfire. The scandal of the century, the preacher's daughter fallen from grace. The women's shelter smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Julia clutched her suitcase handle until her knuckles turned white, surrounded by faces that had seen too much pain. The intake counselor, a tired-looking woman named Miss Lily, had kind eyes but no illusions about happy endings. "You're young," Miss Lily said, sliding paperwork across the metal desk. "Got any skills? Family support?" "No family." The words tasted bitter. "But I was valedictorian. Full scholarship to Howard." Miss Lily's expression softened. "Was." "They rescinded it. Moral clause." Julia's voice cracked. Academic excellence meant nothing when wrapped in scandal. The dean's phone call had been swift and merciless, decades of tradition more important than one girl's future. Her roommate was Eloise Merton, a 19-year-old with arms covered in scars and eyes that had seen hell. "First rule," Eloise whispered that night as they lay on thin mattresses, "don't trust nobody. Second rule, find a way out before this place swallows you whole." The baby kicked for the first time at 2 a.m., a flutter like butterfly wings against her ribs. Julia pressed her hand to her stomach, tears flowing silently. "We're going to make it," she whispered to the darkness. "Somehow we're going to prove them all wrong." Outside, police sirens wailed through the night. Inside, women cried softly into their pillows, each carrying stories of abandonment and survival. But something burned in Julia's chest, hot and fierce. Not desperation, determination. The world had written her off as another statistic. She would rewrite that story with her own hands. 3 weeks at the shelter taught Julia that pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. She stood in line at the food bank, her growing belly hidden beneath Rose's oversized hoodie, when someone called her name. "Julia Thompson? Girl, is that really you?" She turned to find Mrs. Evelyn Lawson, her former high school economics teacher. The woman's eyes widened, taking in Julia's situation with the quick calculation of someone who'd seen too many bright students fall through the cracks. "Mrs. Lawson, I can explain." "Nothing to explain, baby." The older woman's voice was gentle but firm. "But we need to talk." They sat in Mrs. Lawson's beat-up Honda Civic, rain pattering against the windshield. The teacher's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles showing her internal struggle. "I know what happened with your parents," she said finally. "My sister works at your father's church." The congregation's buzzing with righteous indignation. Julia's cheeks burned with shame. "I understand if you don't want to be associated." "Stop." Mrs. Lawson turned to face her. 20 years of teaching has taught me one thing. Talent doesn't disappear because of mistakes. I've been watching you since freshman year, Julia. Your analytical mind, your drive, that's rare." She reached into her purse, pulling out a business card. "My brother-in-law owns a small construction company. They need someone to handle books, scheduling, basic office work. It's not glamorous, but it's honest money." The card felt like salvation between Julia's fingers. "Why would you help me?" Mrs. Lawson smiled sadly. "Because sometimes teachers get to be guardian angels. And because I believe in second chances." Lawson Construction occupied a cramped office above an auto repair shop, the smell of motor oil and concrete dust creating an oddly comforting atmosphere. Miguel Lawson, Mrs. Lawson's brother-in-law, was a burly man with calloused hands and suspicious eyes that softened when he saw Julia's determination. "You sure about this, Mija? Construction's a rough business. Not many 18-year-old pregnant girls can handle it." "I'm not many girls," Julia replied, her chin lifted with defiance that had become her armor. The work was brutal. 12-hour days managing schedules, chasing payments from clients who treated small businesses like bank loans they never intended to repay. Her back ached constantly, her feet swelled beyond recognition, but every paycheck was a step away from the shelter. At night, she studied business management books borrowed from the library, her growing belly serving as a makeshift desk. Eloise watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You're crazy, you know that?" Eloise said one evening, watching Julia calculate profit margins by lamplight. "Most girls in our situation would be looking for a man to save them." "No man's coming to save us," Julia replied without looking up from her spreadsheet. "We save ourselves." The baby kicked harder now, as if agreeing with her mother's fierce determination. At 5 months pregnant, Julia had transformed Miguel's chaotic office into an efficient machine. Invoices that used to take weeks were processed in days. Client complaints dropped to nearly zero. "You've got a gift," Miguel told her one Friday, handing her a bonus check. "Ever think about starting your own business?" The seed was planted. In the darkness of the shelter that night, Julia pressed her hand to her belly and whispered, "Mama's going to build us an empire, baby. Just you wait." Labor started during a thunderstorm that shook the hospital windows like angry fists. Julia gripped the bed rails, Eloise holding her hand while nurses moved efficiently around them. No family waited in the hallway. No father paced nervously with cigars. Just her, Rosa, and the storm. "Push, honey, one more big push," the doctor encouraged. At 3:17 a.m., Mia Thompson entered the world with lungs that could wake the dead and tiny fists that reached for stars she couldn't yet see. Julia sobbed as they placed her daughter on her chest, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it felt like drowning and flying simultaneously. "She's beautiful," Eloise whispered, tears streaming down her scarred face. "She looks like you but stronger somehow." Mia's eyes opened, dark and knowing, as if she understood the weight of the world she'd been born into. In that moment, Julia felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. The scared girl who'd been thrown away was gone. In her place sat a mother who would burn the world down before letting anyone hurt her child. Mrs. Lawson arrived with flowers and a car seat, her own eyes wet with emotion. "How are you feeling, Mama?" "Like I could conquer everything," Julia laughed, exhausted but exhilarated. "Like nothing can stop us now." Miguel peeked around the door, his tough guy facade crumbling at the sight of the baby. "Boss lady, take all the time you need. Job'll be here when you're ready." But as visitors left and the hospital grew quiet, a darker thought crept in. Somewhere across town, her parents were sleeping peacefully, unaware their granddaughter had just taken her first breath. Unaware of the miracle they'd chosen to abandon. Julia kissed Mia's forehead. "They made their choice, baby girl. Now we make ours." 2 years transformed everything. Julia's cramped studio apartment above the laundromat buzzed with activity. Baby toys scattered across financial reports, Mia babbling while her mother calculated construction estimates. The toddler had inherited her mother's fierce intelligence, solving shape puzzles with the same determination Julia applied to business problems. Miguel's construction company had doubled its revenue under Julia's management. She'd implemented systems that eliminated waste, negotiated better supplier contracts, and most importantly, treated workers like humans instead of expenses. Word spread through the industry about the young woman who could turn struggling businesses around. "You're wasting your talent here," Miguel told her one evening as she prepared to leave. Mia sat on her hip, chewing contentedly on a teething ring while reviewing the day's invoices. "You could be running Fortune 500 companies with that brain." "Maybe someday," Julia smiled, but her mind was already spinning with bigger possibilities. She'd been saving every penny beyond basic needs, watching her bank account grow with the patience of someone who understood that empires weren't built overnight. The call came on a Tuesday that would change everything. Davis and Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm, needed someone to salvage their failing client relationships. Their previous manager had embezzled half their operating budget before disappearing to Mexico with his secretary. "We've heard about your work," the voice on the phone explained. "Frankly, we're desperate. The job pays triple what you're making now, but it's high pressure. Sink or swim." Julia looked at Mia, who was stacking blocks with architectural precision. Her daughter deserved more than a studio apartment above a laundromat. She deserved the world. "When do I start?" Davis and Associates occupied 3 floors of downtown's most prestigious office building, all glass and steel reaching toward heaven like a modern Tower of Babel. Julia's first day was baptism by fire. 7 angry clients threatening lawsuits, 2 employees on the verge of nervous breakdowns, and a financial report that looked like a crime scene. "You must be our miracle worker," said James Davis, the company's founder, his smile tight with barely contained panic. "I hope you brought a magic wand." Mia spent her days at Little Scholars Daycare, the most expensive facility Julia could find. Every morning drop-off was agony, watching her daughter toddle away without looking back, already displaying the independence that would serve her well in life. The work was brutal. 18-hour days became normal, client meetings that stretched past midnight, presentations delivered on 3 hours of sleep. Julia's colleagues watched with mixture of respect and resentment as she systematically rebuilt relationships they'd thought were beyond repair. "How do you do it?" asked Sandra Wilkins, the company's marketing director, as they shared takeout Chinese food at 11 p.m. "Single mom, full-time executive, and you never seem to crack." "I don't have a choice," Julia replied simply, reviewing contracts while eating lo mein with one hand. "Failure isn't an option when someone's depending on you." But success came with a price. At 2.5, Mia spoke in full sentences but saved her first words each day for the daycare teacher. Julia felt the sting of missing those precious moments, but reminded herself this sacrifice was temporary. She was building something bigger than either of them could imagine. Late at night, after Mia was asleep, Julia worked on her real project, a business plan that would shake the industry to its core. "You're insane," Eloise said, pacing Julia's upgraded 2-bedroom apartment while Mia played with educational toys that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "You've got a 6-figure job, benefits, security. Why throw it away for some crazy startup dream?" Julia spread financial projections across her dining table, each spreadsheet representing months of secret research and planning. Because I'm tired of making other people rich with my ideas. Because I want Mia to see that women can build empires, not just work for them. Thompson Consulting Solutions would revolutionize how small businesses accessed expertise. Instead of hiring expensive full-time consultants, companies could tap into a network of specialists on demand. It was Uber for business consulting, with Julia as the architect of a new economy. The $50,000 in savings felt simultaneously massive and insignificant. Enough to rent office space and hire 2 employees for 6 months. Not nearly enough if her calculations were wrong. James Davis didn't take her resignation well. "You're making a mistake, Julia. The startup failure rate is 90%. You have a good thing here." "Good isn't enough," she replied, boxing up her personal items while he watched in disbelief. "I didn't survive homelessness and single motherhood to settle for good." Mrs. Lawson visited that weekend, bringing homemade tamales and grandmotherly concern. "Are you sure about this, Mija? Mia needs stability." Julia watched her 3-year-old daughter conduct business with her stuffed animals, using a toy phone and mimicking her mother's professional vocabulary. She needs to see that dreams are worth fighting for. That being scared isn't the same as being stopped. The first day of Thompson Consulting Solutions dawned gray and rainy, as if the universe was testing her resolve. But as Julia unlocked her new office door, Mia's hand in hers, she felt invincible. 5 years built Thompson Consulting Solutions into an industry phenomenon. What started in a cramped office above a coffee shop had expanded to occupy an entire downtown building, employing over 200 consultants across 12 states. Forbes featured Julia on their 30 Under 30 list. Harvard Business School invited her to speak about disruptive innovation. Mia, now 8, had her own mini office next to her mother's, complete with a child-sized desk where she did homework while Julia conducted video conferences with Fortune 500 CEOs. The little girl spoke 3 languages, coded basic websites, and could explain market disruption theory to anyone who'd listen. "Mama, why don't I have grandparents?" Mia asked one evening as they shared dinner in their penthouse apartment overlooking the city skyline. The question hit Julia like a physical blow, even though she'd been preparing for it for years. "Sometimes families break, baby girl," Julia said carefully. "But that doesn't mean we're broken. We're whole all by ourselves." Success hadn't dulled the pain of abandonment. If anything, achievement made their absence more stark. Every milestone, every award, every media interview highlighted the empty spaces where family should have been cheering her on. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same moral flexibility her father had condemned in teenage pregnancy was now celebrated as innovative business thinking. The daughter he'd cast out was transforming industries he barely understood. Late one night, working on expansion plans, Julia Googled her parents for the first time in years. Pastor Bernard Thompson had been promoted to district supervisor. Patricia Thompson ran a women's ministry focused on supporting teenage mothers. The ultimate twist of fate. "Do you ever wonder about them?" Eloise asked during one of their monthly dinners. She'd gotten her GED, started college, and was now Julia's head of human resources. "Every day," Julia admitted. "But wondering isn't the same as needing." The call came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that promised nothing more significant than quarterly reviews and client presentations. Julia's assistant, David, knocked hesitantly on her office door, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked suspiciously like pity. "There's a Patricia Thompson on line 3, he said softly. "She says she's your mother." The coffee mug slipped from Julia's fingers, shattering against the marble floor in an explosion of ceramic and caffeine. 9 years of silence broken by 7 digits on a phone display. "Transfer it to my private line," she managed, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. "And close the door." The phone rang once, twice. On the 3rd ring, Julia's hand moved without conscious thought. "Hello. Julia? Baby, is that really you?" Her mother's voice was older, weathered by years of guilt and regret, but unmistakably the same woman who'd sung lullabies and kissed scraped knees. "It's me." The words came out harder than intended, armored by years of survival. Your father and I have been following your success. The magazines, the television interviews. We're so proud." "Proud." The word exploded from Julia's chest like a bullet. "Proud of what?" The daughter you threw away? The granddaughter you've never met. Silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of a decade's worth of consequences. Mia appeared in the doorway, concerned by her mother's raised voice. "Who is it, Mama?" Patricia's sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. Is that her?" Julia looked at her daughter. Brilliant, beautiful, confident in ways Julia had never been at that age. The child who'd grown up without grandparents' love because of choices made by people who claimed to follow a god of forgiveness. "Her name is Mia," Julia said flatly. "Your granddaughter. The one you've never bothered to meet." They met at a neutral location, a upscale restaurant downtown where the chances of causing a scene were minimized by white tablecloths and quiet jazz. Julia arrived 15 minutes early, using the time to compose herself while watching rain streak the windows like tears. Her parents walked in together, aged by more than the 9 years that had passed. Her father's hair was completely gray now, his once commanding presence diminished by something that looked like shame. Her mother moved carefully, as if afraid sudden movements might shatter this fragile reunion. "You look," Patricia began, then stopped, overwhelmed. "Successful," Julia finished coldly. "The word you're looking for is successful. Despite your best efforts." Bernard Thompson, the man who'd once filled her entire world, remained silent, studying his hands like scripture. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. "We made a mistake," he said simply. "The biggest mistake of our lives." "A mistake." Julia's voice could have cut glass. "Abandoning your pregnant daughter isn't a mistake. It's a choice. One you lived with comfortably for 9 years until my success made it inconvenient." Patricia fumbled in her purse, producing newspaper clippings, magazine articles, printed internet pages. "We followed every step of your career. Every award, every achievement. We never stopped loving you." "Love." Julia laughed bitterly. "Love doesn't cash you out when things get complicated. Love doesn't care more about reputation than family." She pulled out her phone, showing them recent photos of Mia. At school plays, science fairs, birthday parties filled with chosen family who'd earned the right to be there. "This is your granddaughter," she said, her voice breaking despite her best efforts. 9 years old. Brilliant, kind, everything you'd want in a grandchild. And she's never once asked why her grandparents don't love her, because I taught her that real family chooses to show up. The confrontation ended with no tears, no dramatic reconciliation, no Hollywood ending wrapped in forgiveness. Julia's parents left the restaurant carrying the weight of choices that couldn't be undone, while she returned home to the family she'd built from scratch. Mia, Rosa, Mrs. Lawson, Miguel, and dozens of others who'd chosen love over judgment. "How did it go?" Eloise asked that evening, watching Mia demonstrate her latest coding project to an audience of stuffed animals and houseplants. "Like closure," Julia replied, surprised by the lightness in her chest. "I thought I needed their apology to feel whole. Turns out I just needed to say my piece." The business continued thriving. Thompson Consulting Solutions went public the following year, making Julia one of the youngest female CEOs on the NYSE. Magazine covers multiplied. Speaking engagements commanded 6-figure fees. The scared teenager who'd been thrown away had become a force of nature. But the real victory was smaller, more intimate. It was Mia confidently presenting her science project to a room full of adults. It was family dinners with people who'd chosen to love them unconditionally. It was the knowledge that they'd built something beautiful from absolute destruction. Bernard and Patricia Thompson sent birthday cards now, tentative attempts at connection that Julia neither acknowledged nor returned. They'd created a chasm too wide for greeting cards to bridge. Standing in her corner office one evening, watching the city lights twinkle below, Julia reflected on the strange mathematics of family. She'd lost 2 people who should have loved her unconditionally, but gained dozens who chose to love her daily. "Mama, are you ready for dinner?" Mia called from the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, ready to conquer whatever came next. "Always ready for you, baby girl," Julia replied, gathering her things. They walked toward the elevator hand in hand, 2 generations of Thompson women who'd learned that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up, every single day no matter what. Thanks for watching. Your support means more to us than words can express. We're so thankful to have you here. Tell us in the comment section what you think about this story.